All right, hi everybody. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Zach, but I want to give it up to this really cool panel bringing together security experts, investors to talk about AI and security, how this world-altering paradigm is going to impact the things we care about a lot. So to start off with, why don't you go down the line, introduce yourselves, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get right into it.
Sure. My name is Patrick O'Kane. I'm a general partner with Borderless Capital. Borderless, we're one of the more active blockchain investment firms out there, primarily in venture. Historically, we did early stage funds, launching multiple concurrent funds at the same time. We would pick a core facet category of the ecosystem and launch a fund. Moving forward, we're just going to transition to having one venture strategy. It's an agnostic strategy where we invest across the full spectrum, across ecosystems and across stages. And one unique thing about what I'm doing, I have a governmental background. I spent about 7 years working in the intelligence field and then another 7 years working in the DOJ. And that was starting in 2012, and I helped to build out some of the initial crypto investigative strategies throughout the DOJ. So I leverage that government experience to focus a lot on dual use companies in the blockchain space. So dual use is the term used for companies that support government operations, but are also supporting commercial operations as well. So a lot of those plays are in the compliance and security space. But I think when you look at the venture capital landscape in blockchain, I think that's a very unique thing, and it's very timely right now with the government putting their stamp of approval on the blockchain space. They're going to have to bring in lots of technology to make sure that they can keep the integrity of the blockchain crypto markets secure. So that's my background, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Hacken, for having us.
I call it cozy.
Intimate.
Yeah. I'm Dhirendra Shukla. I spent several years in the telco industry, primarily looking at fraud, looking at M&A, looking at product build-out. And the company I was working for is Nortel Networks. And when they went under, my division was acquired by another company. I said, look, I need to find another gig. I'm a little bit tired of the telco space. And then I moved to the University of New Brunswick to become a prof. I've been there. I went there for 1 year, and now I'm celebrating 16 years. Through the program, we've launched over 270 startups. And my research arm was working with the securities regulators. No one talked about it today. Remember the initial coin offering? Remember that era where everyone was so excited? So we were contacted by the securities regulators to look at what was happening, how this was expanding, who was avoiding paying taxes. So that was how I initially got into this space. First was just to fund more and more students doing interesting, novel work, and then went on to launch a company that we did pre-seed, and we're just at that point we were looking at how can we intersect the crypto, Web3, all this space with what could AI do to enable interesting things that we could help people understand what was happening in the space and what was going on. And that's how I got into the crypto space. That's how founded Grey Wolf AI, and quite excited to be here and looking at engaging with the cozy environment that we have right now. Just want to say that generally I speak in 3-hour blocks as a prof. So I will, please hold me back, and I'll hand it over.
Thank you. So Luis, founder CEO of Mawari. What we do, basically, we orchestrate compute for XR and AI. So we put the two technologies together. I started the company back in 2017, actually in parallel to the ICO boom, and I had a choice. Do I go to the ICO or do I do XR? I would be rich right now if I was chosen the ICO. But anyways, bottom line is that since we started the company, we saw that XR actually is a complementary technology to AI. We have seen it in sci-fi movies everywhere. Like we have holograms, but we also have AI, right? So we created a company understanding that instead of the content delivery for videos today is just very well distributed and it has a very specific infrastructure. But for XR and 3D, you need to actually distribute the compute and the application. So it's a very different way of doing things. And 2017, nobody really believed that it was coming anytime soon, but we just started creating our core technology. We bootstrapped the company for about 6 years, just actually working with telcos, interestingly enough, because streaming for XR is one of the killer use cases of 5G and 6G. And then in 2022, we raised our first seed round. Why and how we entered to crypto or to Web3 per se is we need resilient networks because we need a lot of distributed compute across the world. So the only way to really scale it is through a distributed and decentralized network. Then Borderless Capital in our second round actually led. So they believed, okay, so now that we proved that we can do this real-time streaming in a centralized way, they support us, and now we're here. This year, we're going to market, kind of like showing one of the few, I would say, real-world use cases of XR, AI, and blockchain all together. Thank you. Yeah. So.
Awesome. I want to continue with one more warm-up question, just because I'll admit to personally having maybe a morbid fascination with DeFi hacks. I just think it's one of the most crypto stories out there, especially like we see it in a few major forms. We see the Lazarus Group out of North Korea generally attacking people, trying to compromise your software engineers, sending them an infected offer letter. But you also have DeFi exploits that look carefully at a smart contract's code, and sometimes they'll notice one line that wasn't there, and they're able to engineer an attack using Oracle manipulation or flash loans or all of these fun tools that truly can only exist in crypto. So do you share this fascination? Do you have like a favorite DeFi hack? Not, obviously they're all tragedies, but one that you found specifically interesting in some way?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So one of the unique things about hacks in the space is the more complex attacks, flash loans and reentrancy, and they've decreased somewhat, and social engineering attacks are increasing. I think it's like almost 50% now. And I think a lot of that is driven by AI. It's much easier to leverage AI for social engineering attacks. I think the long-term problem will be using AI to actually exploit smart contracts at scale very quickly, and that's going to be a huge problem. That's down the line a little bit. So right now we're facing social engineering, and I think the wildest hack that I can think of in recent history was it Munchables? Is that it? So there was this one guy. They hired him, and then they hired another guy. Then a third guy, and he was a dev, but he was all for the same person, and he just had different personas, and he made his way in and had full access to the code and stole everything. I think there was a pretty significant recovery with that one, but I just thought that was fascinating. And then how do you protect against that? As a VC, I make sure they have the code audits and they have continuous monitoring. But in terms of having a culture of security from the ground up, it's really hard to evaluate that as a VC, but that's what keeps me up at night.
So, it's very difficult to look at which is your favorite. It's a bit morbid, but I'm very, very geeky. So basically, I'm fascinated with every single attack that happens, ransomware attack that happens, kidnapping where they're asking for crypto. Look, you're asking, so I would be looking at every single element of those things and what did we learn? What happens is, I think as smart contracts and things are deployed, the new ones most of them are taking into consideration what had happened in the past. So that is wonderful that organizations are able to help them understand, assess the risk of, but unfortunately what has already been deployed aren't in a position that they are now being re-vectored, learning and growing. So the opportunity as more and more companies get into the audit space of smart contracts and evolution, how are people that have already deployed that, how are they learning and adapting and growing from that perspective? I think the AI components can really help enhance and speed up a lot of those capabilities and scale the audit functionality, but at the same time, the vulnerability, while you talked about external attacks, the vulnerability of internal social engineering, like Patrick was saying, social engineering context from within the company, how AI is being used to manipulate and get into and inside the company and make the vulnerability from a human perspective is going to be significantly increasing as the maturity model of your smart contract grows. So human is, I know the previous conversation they were talking about the Terminator creating another Terminator to come in to block it. There's a huge opportunity to look at how can we look and evolve the entire ecosystem and the smart contracts on a regular basis rather than our initial thing. I'm an engineer. The first thing they teach you is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's a problem with that because they're coming after you. Right? So it might be a little bit of a cop-out that I didn't pick one, right? So sorry.
I'll accept it.
Sure. It's hard to pick one, but also very fascinated by social engineering, because actually even in our company, I have interviewed people that are not really that person now with AI, and it was just really that happened in parallel when the Bybit hack happened and how they manage all this social engineering. And it boiled down that, okay, so our company is based in Japan, but we are a global company. It's like, okay, so the person say, oh, I'm Japanese, but we're speaking in English. And when we finally actually, okay, let's start speaking in Japanese, they didn't have the language model to speak in Japanese. So we figured out that, okay, fair enough. That's they're just faking the identity in the end. So yeah, I guess that Bybit had for us was very meaningful because it was like, okay, so it's actually happening. We're a small startup, but even they're trying to get in and figure out things about our technology. So that was really significant. But as Dhirendra says, like AI is augmenting, and it's kind of like a good way to defend in the end. But human creativity is always attacking is actually the most scary thing, because AI can analyze all the patterns, but we always come up with new patterns. So it's a continuous fight in the end.
This might be half an internet meme, but I've heard reports of staff asking potential hires to say mean things about Kim Jong-un, and if they won't, sometimes they will just leave the group chat immediately, and that's a red flag. So I think the on-chain nature of continuous like DeFi auditing and monitoring, that kind of makes sense where you have AI defending against AI attacks, but what can we do to stop these social engineering attacks? Is there an AI solution to maybe flag suspicious behavior, or is it just about education, and how do we make more education standard for these types of attacks?
Well, I don't think AI is simply AI learning. You heard Jeffrey Hinton's, when he got the Nobel Prize, he talked about, if everyone is using AI for the betterment of society, we're all going to win, no question. But even if you have a small community of people that are going to use AI for coming from bad place, then we're in trouble as a society. So yes, we need to educate people. We need to advance AI. We need to stay on top of things without a question. Unfortunately, when you started this conversation, if you start listing all the hacks and things, sheer amount of money they have. I don't think there are enough startups that have even come to a small fraction of how much money they have taken from the ecosystem. So how do you really honestly go and compete with an environment where the resources are not there? So we're not at the same playing field. They are definitely I don't want to scare anyone, but from a financial resource perspective, and their motivation is totally weird. We need to, only way to level the field is get more and more people access to resources. I'm not saying you just give them access to amazing resources that people can build on to build a better and safer community. So just list, there's an entire list of how many hacks and what has happened is mind-boggling. The other thing to note is that the list is the list that we know about. Unfortunately, most of the people do not report. I would say maybe 70 to 80% of the things that are happening by these nefarious actors is not even on anyone's radar because they're so embarrassed, they think it'll take away credibility. So you can just simply imagine what is happening, how it's happening. And AI, doing AI, yes, but let's up the playing, what an opportunity for everyone. And then at the same time, education is key for people within the organization. From a social engineering perspective, not enough people are talking about what happened. So the environment doesn't learn. The only way you can grow is beginning to start talking about this happened, how it happened, this is what's happening. Unfortunately, even for law enforcement, they shut things down before it can go anywhere.
All right. And Patrick, I want to ask you a bit more on this topic. How can you tell as an investor if a DeFi, DePIN project is spending enough on security? What do you look for? What are the green flags, red flags?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's pretty apparent right up front based on the maturity of the team and their go-to-market strategy and just the way they communicate how they're rolling out their products. It becomes clear whether they're just trying to move quick to capture a certain market cycle, or are they playing the long game and really embedding security from the ground up. So you can identify that pretty easily. I think for earlier stage startups, the challenge now is and this is where a lot of crypto VCs aren't focusing. Our fund and 10T and a few others there's only a handful of firms that are investing in and excited about later stage opportunities. That becomes a little more complex when the company's been around for 5-10 years. They've built their security framework from the ground up based on pre-AI effectively, and now they have to restructure and build and make sure that security does become fundamental to their operations, and that becomes very tricky to assess. So, I mean, if there's good financials, you can see what they're spending money on. You talk to the security team. I usually reach out to Dorendra, if he has any ideas, or Uri Stav, a good friend of mine who's a massive security expert in the space. I think everyone here knows him. So I tap into my network as well to make sure we're doing the proper underwriting.
And Luis, from a DePIN builder perspective, what has that experience been like with you when it comes to security? Is it something that you put a framework in place from the start and build on, or do you ever have to go back and reevaluate your infrastructure based on the current threats?
Well, we are re-evaluating everything, to be honest. I mean, also coming from Web 2, because we started as just a Web 2 company, in which it was not that scary of a place in the end. We had very bad practices in the end. But, I mean, unfortunately, when it comes to security, you learn by experience. Once the bad things happen is when you are very reactive and preventive of okay, I got hacked, I got kidnapped, basically. Then you start setting up security. So I agree with the education is important, and in the end, kind of like, teaching all of our employees right now, we're trying to do this awareness, but not in the way that, okay, come to the lesson and do it, but actually just doing it, okay, so not telling them and they get hacked and then they get scared. So that's actually an interesting way to have them be self-conscious. Okay, so this could be happening, and then they see the news. So it is a never-evolving process. But this last year, as we are going to market, it's been incredible, because there's now this rule of thumb that minimum 10% of your entire budget should be security. When I first started building financials to pitch investors, that to me, Yuri told me about that. I was like, really? Okay. And now I see actually, how it actually does make sense. We are a Hacken customer, and we work with Dorendra, because I do see, okay, the world is changing very, very, very fast, and right now we are more public, and I see the amount of bots and attacks. Like we, for example, launched our testnet, and we really didn't launch it. It was just for the core group of Discord that were the OGs, and in less than one day we had like 20,000 wallets subscribed, and it's like, okay, and nobody knew about it. And most of them are bots, and they were trying to find the holes. Some of them actually did find exploits and all that. So it's really exponential to what we were imagining 2 years ago when we actually started going into Web3.
I wanted to ask you, Patrick, in my view, it feels like law enforcement has actually shown itself to be pretty resourceful when it comes to tracking and catching crypto crime. Regulators, very behind the ball. Do you see that changing over the next 5 years, and how?
In the sense that regulators are going to catch up to?
I mean, what would you tell regulators about security in the space? What should they be looking for? What metrics, and how to make sure that security regulations meant to make people safe don't actually slow down the pace of progress?
Yeah, it's a fine line to cross. And I do think you're right. The law enforcement has gotten very adept at tracing the funds. There's a lot of great tools, Gray Wolf, chain analysis in Elliptic and TRM Labs. They came out of the gate first, and they're great. But the needs of these agencies are changing, so there's more AI-driven analytics platforms like Gray Wolf. Then there's just other tooling, like a lot of these attacks, they happen. We see them on chain, but the coordination happens off chain, right? Like all crimes. So having that data, understanding where these people are talking about it. One of my portfolio companies, Cloudburst, does just that. They, in my opinion, they have the most robust off-chain data set that feeds into the analytics platforms. So tooling is massive. And then, a model that I think really works well is the governmental and industry partnerships and working groups. Treasury just put out a request for information on security issues with stablecoins. And I think that's great that they're leveraging the expertise of industry here and all of the folks in this room. That's going to go a long way, because the government folks are very smart, but they don't have the experience that we do in the field. So I'm a huge proponent of that governmental and private sector partnerships to make sure everyone's up to speed on the latest trends. And then lastly, there's fragmentation on regulation, not only with AI, but also with crypto. Not only international, but within the US as well. There's states that have different frameworks. So this fragmentation, if we all want this to work together, all of the regulations kind of have to be somewhat consistent internationally. So I don't know how to get there, but I think that's the path that the industry needs to take.
Sure. We're coming up on time, so as a closer, can I ask you all to either make a prediction for the next 5 years, or optionally you could say an overrated or underrated idea right now in security that you'd either like to see discussed more or less? We could start with Luis, if you're ready.
It is underrated. For example, me that I've been working on XR now for 15 years, like these glasses will be hacked very soon. And Meta probably doesn't have a security plan on board on how actually we are gonna tackle this. And it is it is exciting. It's a new technology, it's a new paradigm, but it also comes with a lot of responsibility that I don't think a lot of people has been thinking of. So in the next 5 years, we will see similar things of social engineering, like what you are seeing in your glasses is not really what you are seeing, and it's gonna get like the Black Mirror level, and that's when people will understand.
So I'm an optimist, right? So an optimist. So I only see that the future is extremely bright because I'm a heavy believer in the good in society and community. And as an optimist, I just see so at this point, if we are able to say what use investigations and detection used to, what we're doing right now is shaving off at least 80% of their heavy lifting for law enforcement and regulators. If it's removing 80%, what we are going to do in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be very exciting for the society and community. So I'm quite optimistic about where we are, where we're going, and how this technology is going to enable even more exciting things to happen.
I'm also an optimist. And the reality is, it's new technology happens throughout history, right? And we figure out how to interact with it. We're a very resilient species, and we will continue to be. So AI presents new threats, and we're going to use AI to mitigate those new threats, and the cycle will continue perpetually. That's just what's going to happen. In terms of the threat that we haven't talked about that I think should be more top of mind, and maybe it is, but quantum. I think there's a really massive threat, largely from China, and it's happening now. Harvest now, decrypt later. That China's been collecting pretty much all of the communications going in and out of their country for decades, and once they have the ability to decrypt that, they're going to have a lot of very secure information. So I think there should be a stronger push. There is, and I don't want to say it's minimized, but there needs to be a lot of focus on post-quantum cryptography across the board, but especially in the blockchain space. And there's really easy ways to come out of the gate with quantum resistance. You know, you can use a VPN, a quantum secure VPN. You can install that on the nodes, and your entire network can be quantum secure through a VPN. So there's ways, but I think we should all be focusing on quantum as well.
A problem for a different panel. Let's give it up for these panelists.
Thank you, Zach, and the panelists.